Have you ever watched someone speak with the confidence of an expert about a topic they clearly know nothing about? You know the type, talking for hours on the most unrelated subject in a group, only for it to become painfully clear later that none of it had any real foundation. Or someone you assume to be an expert, until you realized their entire knowledge came from a couple of blog posts and maybe 2 podcasts. They talk like they're giving a TED Talk. Firm voice, steady gaze, just enough hand gestures to appear wise. Half of what they say is made up, the other half sounds like it came straight from TikTok, dressed in charisma and overconfidence. And then, there's the exact opposite, the quiet one. There's always that person sitting in the corner of the room, barely saying a word, but you feel it. This person knows things, maybe more than anyone else here, but they remain silent. Why? Because inside their mind, there's a council of self-doubt constantly whispering, what if I'm wrong? What if I sound stupid? What if I missed something? And once again, confidence takes the mic, while competence sits quietly in the back. We've all been there. Someone speaks endlessly, bouncing between topics like an expert. But by the end, you find yourself thinking, did they actually say anything of value? Or you meet someone who seems like a wise guru until you discover their entire expertise is just surface-level content recycled from the internet. And yet, they're the ones people listen to. So is this just a social illusion? Bad luck? Ego? Nope. This is a glitch, hard-coded in our brains. A full-on neurological bug. And it became crystal clear in 1995. A man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into 2 banks in Pittsburgh in broad daylight without a mask. He stared directly at the security cameras, emptied the safes, and walked out like nothing happened. The next day, his face was on the evening news. He was arrested almost immediately, and his explanation, "But I wore the juice." Yes, you read that right. Wheeler believed rubbing lemon juice on his face would make him invisible to security cameras. Because somewhere, he had read that lemon juice can be used as invisible ink, and figured he could apply the same logic to his entire face. The story was so absurd it caught the attention of 2 psychologists at Cornell University, David Dunning and Justin Kruger. And they asked a question that would go on to become legendary in psychology. Could a person be so lacking in knowledge that they don't even realize how much they don't know? To explore this question, Dunning and Kruger ran a series of studies. They gave participants tests in grammar, logic, and humor, then asked a simple follow-up. Compared to others, how well do you think you did? The results? The worst performers consistently rated themselves as above average. Some even thought they had done the best. But what about the people who actually scored high? They did the opposite. They assumed others did just as well or even better. Dunning and Kruger had uncovered something big. When you know very little about something, you don't just lack knowledge. You lack the awareness of that lack. It's not just not knowing. It's not knowing that you don't know. Like standing at the base of a mountain shrouded in fog. You look up and say, hey, how tall could it be? But the truth is, you haven't even taken the first step. And that's why confidence drops as knowledge increases. Psychologists even have a name for it, the Valley of Stupidity. This is where the illusion of confidence begins to collapse. You start realizing that the topic is far more complex than you assumed. And suddenly, you're not so sure anymore. Humility takes root. But beyond that valley, if you keep learning, confidence comes back. This time it's earned, balanced, rooted in understanding. You speak with less arrogance, more care. And your sentences begin with things like, I'm not entirely sure, but... And that's when your words start to truly carry weight. Once you spot the Dunning-Kruger Effect, you can't unsee it, especially today. Because now everyone has a platform, a phone, Wi-Fi, a comment box. But who gets heard the most? The truly knowledgeable? Not usually. Especially in today's social media culture, the comment section is where the Dunning-Kruger Effect thrives. The loudest voices, the most confident judgments, often come from those who think they know but haven't actually learned. You see people giving medical advice based on one TikTok. You see geopolitical analysis from someone who only read a headline. You hear economic rants on Instagram stories that make Bloomberg look subtle. Pandemic hits, everyone becomes a virologist. Election season, Suddenly, we're all political analysts. Bitcoin drops 3%? Here comes your neighbor with laser-eyed crypto charts. But let's be honest, it's not just them. Sometimes it's us too. You start something new, maybe brewing coffee or investing in crypto. You watch 2 YouTube videos, read 3 tips, and suddenly a wave of confidence hits. You make one decent latte and feel like a barista. Strum 3 chords on a guitar and imagine yourself on stage. Make $15 on a coin and think, move over, Warren Buffett. That's the peak of the Dunning-Kruger curve. Some call it Mount Stupid. Low knowledge, high confidence. You've seen 3 pieces of the puzzle and feel like you've solved the entire picture. But that puzzle has 1,000 pieces, and you haven't even touched most of them. As you start touching more pieces of that puzzle, your picture gets blurry. What once felt crystal clear now seems complicated. You begin to think, this might be more complex than I thought. And that's why truly knowledgeable people often sound cautious. They avoid speaking in absolutes. They pause, they reflect. Not because they're indecisive, but because they know the limits of what they know. Meanwhile, those still splashing around on the surface, they speak in bold capital letters because they don't see the gray areas. Here's the irony. The more you learn, the more ambiguity you notice. The less you know, the more certain you become. Take investing, for example, and on the surface, it seems easy. Buy low, sell high. But once you dive in, you find layers. Behavioral economics, inflation, monetary policy, international crises, market psychology, consumer sentiment, global conflicts. Suddenly, that simple formula turns into a house of cards. That's why real experts often say things like, it depends on the context. Let's see how it plays out. But society? Society doesn't reward thoughtful hesitation. It rewards loud confidence. Remember that kid in school, the one who talked nonstop, had an opinion on everything, joked around, never studied, but was always the loudest? Didn't know who Socrates was, but argued with the philosophy teacher? Not logical, not informed, but somehow popular. And the quiet genius of the class? Wiping their glasses, wondering, what am I doing wrong? The irony, that loudmouth who barely passed math is now dating the most popular girl in school, posting motivational quotes about success and mindset on Instagram. Meanwhile, the deep thinkers, still overanalyzing every decision. Why? Because ignorance often breeds confidence. And when a society rewards confidence over competence, that confidence becomes social currency. But this effect isn't just personal, it's a cultural virus. Sometimes self-delusion becomes collective delusion. Let's rewind to a powerful historical example. The Cold War. 2 global superpowers, America and the Soviet Union, stood ready to launch nuclear war at any moment. But it wasn't just a military standoff, it was a war of narratives. Each side told its citizens, we are right, they are evil. The US portrayed the USSR as a collapsing dictatorship. The Soviets painted the West as morally decayed and corrupt. Both sides were certain. Both believed their version of the truth. But here's the catch. That certainty was often built on limited information. Access to truth was blocked. Questioning the official story, dangerous. The result? Masses of people locked in their own mental echo chambers. Dunning-Kruger went from a personal glitch to a collective hallucination. Lack of knowledge wasn't met with curiosity. It was met with certainty. And that certainty shaped entire international policies. Fast forward to today. Different platforms, same pattern. Everyone has a megaphone now. And what gets amplified? Not nuance, not expertise. Just one thing, certainty. The loudest voices with the most oversimplified truths go viral. And the real experts, they say, I'm not entirely sure. It depends. They speak with nuance, not noise, but nuance doesn't trend. So how do we escape this cycle? How do we avoid the trap of, I barely know, but I'm totally sure? Step 1, radical honesty. The courage to say, I don't know. That's not weakness. That's intellectual strength. Because when you admit ignorance, you open up a space in your mind. And only in that space can real knowledge grow. You turn walls into windows, and windows let in light. As many great thinkers have said, wisdom begins by realizing how little you know. This kind of humility sharpens your questions. You assume less. You listen more. And with that humility comes something else, critical thinking. You stop asking just, is this true or false? You ask, where is this information coming from? What's the foundation? What's the context? Am I missing something? And maybe the most powerful question of all, am I truly certain? Or just used to thinking this way? Because sometimes what we believe is true is just something we've heard 100 times. Real growth begins when we stop defending our assumptions and start examining them. But here's the paradox. The more you know, the more hesitant you become. Overthinking can freeze you. Too much knowledge can lead to analysis paralysis. And sometimes we need a tiny drop of naive courage, not to leap blindly, but to take that first step. Because action tests knowledge. Ideas mean nothing if they never touch reality. You'll stumble, you'll learn, you'll recalibrate. And sometimes all you need to say is, let's try anyway. Yes, you'll make mistakes. Yes, you'll fail sometimes. But every failure is a data point. Every error is progress. The Dunning-Kruger Effect isn't just psychology jargon. It's a mirror. It reminds us, real knowledge doesn't shout, it questions. And wisdom usually starts in silence. So let me ask you this. Have you ever caught yourself in a Dunning-Kruger moment? Thinking you knew it all, only to realize you were just getting started? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk. Because self-awareness doesn't begin with what you know. It begins with questioning what you think you know. And never forget, sometimes the greatest knowledge is realizing how little you truly understand.